The scream tore through the silence of the early morning. Sarah woke up startled, her heart pounding against her chest. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. The smell of smoke filled the room, and through the window, she could see the flames devouring the small wooden church across the street. The same church where, hours before, she had sworn never to set foot again. Now, an impossible choice presented itself. Stay safe or walk through that burning door to save what was left of her lost faith. The digital clock read 3:33 a.m. Was it a sign or just a cruel coincidence? Have you ever wondered how far you would be able to go to recover something you believed you had lost forever? Sarah Miller has always been known in Oak Ridge as the girl of unshakable faith. The daughter of the respected Pastor James Miller, she grew up in the spotlight of the small Christian community, carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. At 28, with brown hair always tied up in an understated bun and green, eyes that seemed to see beyond the visible, Sarah was the perfect example of devotion. Until that Friday night. The autumn sky poured a light rain on Oak Ridge as Sarah parked her old blue Corolla in the empty church parking lot. The wooden building, built by the city's first settlers more than 100 years ago, looked darker than ever. She took a deep breath, smelling wet earth and old wood. His hands trembled as he clutched the briefcase with the documents. "Are you sure about that, Sarah?" His father's voice echoed on the phone hours earlier. "These accusations are very serious. I have all the evidence here, Dad. The financial records, the suspicious transfers. The money from the donations to the orphanage never reached its destination." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "I'll sort this out internally," he finally replied. "We don't need to expose the church to a scandal." "But Dad, these are children who are suffering. The orphanage is about to close due to lack of resources while the money—" "Enough, Sarah. Trust me. I'll take care of it." But Sarah could no longer trust. Not after discovering that his own uncle, Robert Miller, church treasurer and his father's right-hand man, had been embezzling funds for years. And the worst, there were indications that his father knew. Now, standing in the rain, she looked at the church that had been her refuge all her life. The drops ran down her face, mixing with the tears she didn't even realize she was shedding. "Hey, are you okay?" A deep voice surprised her. Sarah turned quickly, finding a tall man under a black umbrella. He wore a worn leather jacket and had dark eyes that seemed to carry too many stories for someone so young. "I am," she replied dryly, clutching the briefcase to her chest. "It doesn't look like it," he insisted, holding out his umbrella to cover her. "I'm Lucas Reed. Sarah Miller, the pastor's daughter," he concluded with a crooked smile. "I heard about you." Something in the way he said it made her take a step back. "What are you doing here at this hour?" she asked, suspiciously. Lucas hesitated for a moment. "Let's say I have unfinished business with this church." Before Sarah could answer, the door to the church opened, revealing the silhouette of her Uncle Robert. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" His voice carried a note of barely concealed panic. "We need to talk, Uncle Robert," she replied, walking toward the entrance. Lucas stood in the rain, watching. There was something in her eyes that Sarah couldn't decipher. A mixture of curiosity and recognition. If you're enjoying this story of faith and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the sequel. Leave your comment on what you think will happen to Sarah. The interior of the church was quiet, lit only by a few emergency lights. The wooden benches, lined up in perfect rows, seemed to be silent witnesses of what was about to happen. The smell of wax from candles and old books filled the air. "Where's my father?" Sarah asked, noting that only her uncle was present. "James had an emergency at the Thompson house," Robert replied, nervously adjusting his tie. "What is so urgent that it cannot wait until tomorrow?" Sarah placed the briefcase on the lectern and opened it. "Yes," she said, scattering printed documents. "Bank statements, transfers, altered records, all showing that the money raised for the Sunshine orphanage never got there." Robert's face turned pale. "Sarah, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she interrupted, her voice trembling with anger. "While those kids barely have enough to eat, you bought a vacation home in Lake Tahoe and a new boat." "Things aren't that simple," he tried to argue, running his hand through his gray hair. "The church was facing financial difficulties. Did we need to steal from orphans?" Sarah almost screamed. "And my father? He knows. All this, doesn't he?" Robert's silence was his response. At that moment, the door of the church opened again. Sarah expected to see her father, but it was Lucas who walked in, drenched in the rain. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I think you should know there's someone else coming." As if confirming his words, beacons illuminated the windows of the church. Sarah recognized her father's car. "Sarah," Robert whispered, approaching her, "think carefully about what you're doing. This will..." "destroy this community, your father's reputation, everything we have built." "You built on lies," she replied, recoiling. When Pastor James entered the church, the air seemed to get heavier. His eyes, so similar to Sarah's, scanned the scene. His daughter by the pulpit, the documents scattered, Robert with a defeated expression, and a stranger watching everything from the entrance. "What's going on here?" he asked, his authoritative voice echoing through the walls. "The truth, Dad," Sarah replied. Finally. The next 2 hours were the most painful of Sarah's life. His father did not deny the accusations. Instead, he tried to justify, to explain that the relocations of funds were temporary, that eventually the money would be replaced. "We're doing God's work here, Sarah," he argued. "Sometimes difficult decisions need to be made for the greater good." "What greater good justifies stealing from destitute children?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Where is God in all this?" That's when her father said the words that would change everything. "Sometimes, daughter, we need to be practical. Faith does not pay bills." Something broke inside Sarah at that moment, as if a fundamental pillar of his existence had collapsed. His whole life had been built on the belief that his father was a man of God, upright, incorruptible. Now he stood before her, justifying the theft in the name of practicality. "I'm going to report you," she said, picking up the documents with trembling hands. "For the police, for the congregation, for everyone." "Sarah, be reasonable," her father pleaded, trying to hold her arm. She broke free. "Don't touch me. I don't know who you are anymore." When Sarah turned to leave, she found Lucas still standing by the door, watching everything with an indecipherable expression. "You," Pastor James pointed out to him. "Who are you and what are you doing in my church?" Lucas took a step forward, and the light revealed a thin scar that cut. through his left eyebrow. "My name is Lucas Reed, and this church also means a lot to me, Pastor Miller. Or should I say, Uncle James?" The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah looked from Lucas to her father, confused. "Impossible," James muttered, his face pale as if he had seen a ghost. "Rachel's son," Robert whispered, acknowledgement and horror mixed in his voice. "Who is Rachel?" Sarah asked, feeling that she was about to discover another buried secret. "My mother," Lucas replied, looking directly at Pastor James. "The woman her father kicked out of this church 25 years ago when he found out she was pregnant and unmarried. Like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear about redemption and second chances. Don't forget to activate the bell to receive notifications of new episodes of this inspiring story." Luke's revelation fell like a bomb. Sarah looked at her father, expecting a vehement denial, but what she saw was guilt on his face. Rachel Reed. Was a member of this church, Lucas continued, his calm voice contrasting with the storm of emotions in the room. A dedicated woman who committed what you called a sin. She fell in love with the wrong man, got pregnant, and when she sought support from the community that was supposed to welcome her, she was publicly expelled. Those were other times, Pastor James tried to explain. The congregation had strict standards. Standards? Lucas laughed humorlessly. My mother had to raise a child on her own, working 3 jobs, while you preached about compassion and forgiveness within these walls. Sarah felt as if the ground was disappearing beneath her feet. Each new revelation was a blow to everything she believed. "Why did you come back?" she asked Lucas. "My mother died 3 months ago," he replied, the pain evident in his voice. "Cancer. In her last days, she asked me to make peace with the past. She said she didn't want me to carry the resentment she had carried for so long." He pulled out of his pocket a faded photo. A young, beautiful woman with dark hair and a gentle smile, holding a baby. This was the last photo of her taken in this church before the expulsion, Lucas explained. I came to return her to the place where she should have been. Sarah looked at the photo and then at her father. "Did you know all that?" "Sarah, you don't understand how difficult it was to maintain the standards of the congregation back then," her father tried to justify. Rachel refused to reveal who the father of the child was, refused to show repentance. "Because there was nothing to regret," Lucas interrupted. "Loving is not a sin. Raising a child with love is not a sin. Sin was in the hearts of those who judged and forsook it." Sarah felt an immediate connection with Lucas. Both were there, confronting the hypocrisies of an institution that should represent love and acceptance. "I'm leaving," she announced suddenly, putting the documents in her briefcase. "I can't be a part of this anymore." "Sarah, daughter, don't make hasty decisions," her father pleaded. "We can work this out as a family." "Family?" she questioned. "What family, Dad? One built on lies and hypocrisy?" She walked toward the door, past Lucas. As he was about to leave, he turned one last time. "I will never set foot in this church again. You do not represent the God I believe in." The rain had intensified when Sarah went out into the night. Tears mingled with the drops that fell on his face. She walked to her car, feeling the weight of each step. "Sarah, wait!" It was Lucas running after her. She stopped, too exhausted to keep running away. "Are you okay?" he asked, again offering his umbrella. "No," she replied honestly. "Nothing is okay." "I know how it feels," he said. "When I found out the truth about my mother, about how she was treated, it was like my whole world had been a lie." Sarah stared at him, seeing for the first time the familiar pain in his eyes. "What did you do?" "First, I was furious. I wanted to destroy everything related to the church, to faith, to God," he admitted. "But then I realized that I would just be perpetuating the cycle of hatred." Thunder echoed in the distance, momentarily illuminating their faces. "I need to go," Sarah said, opening the car door. "Where to?" Lucas asked. She hesitated. "I hadn't thought about it." His whole life was in Oak Ridge, in the house he had shared with his father since his mother had died 10 years ago. "I don't know," she admitted. "I have a couch available," he offered. "It's not much, but it's dry and safe until you decide your next move." Sarah should be suspicious, a stranger offering shelter on the most turbulent night of his life. But something about Luke inspired confidence. Maybe it was the shared pain, or maybe it was something deeper that she didn't yet understand. "Thank you," she finally replied. "But I need to be alone tonight. I need to think." Lucas nodded, respecting his decision. "Take it," he said, handing her a card with his number on it. "If you need anything." Sarah took the card and got into the car. Through the windshield, fogged by the rain, he saw his father and uncle leaving the church, looking in his direction. She started the engine and left, without looking back. Have you ever felt like your faith was being tested? Leave your comment below and share your experience. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow Sarah and Lucas's journey. Sarah drove aimlessly through the dark roads of Oak Ridge. The rain punished the windshield, and the wipers could barely maintain visibility. Like his life, everything seemed like a confusing blur. Eventually, she parked at a viewpoint that overlooked the entire city. From there, he could see the lights of the houses, the bell tower of the church where he had grown up, and the river that cut through the small community. Everything seemed so peaceful from afar, so perfect. A facade, just like his. Faith had been. Sarah took out her cell phone. Dozens of missed calls from his father. She turned off the device and threw it on the passenger seat. Then, for the first time since he had left the church, he allowed himself to cry completely. The crying came like a storm, violent, uncontrollable, purifying, years of blind devotion, of unshakable certainties, crumbling in a single night. Who was she without her faith? Who was she without the perfect image of her father as a spirit guide? God. She whispered between sobs, "If you really exist, why did you allow it? Why did you let me believe lies for so long?" Only the sound of rain answered. When the day dawned, Sarah was exhausted but strangely calm. The storm had passed, leaving a clear sky and a rising sun that painted the horizon in orange hues. She had made a decision. She would leave Oak Ridge. He would start a new life away from lies and hypocrisies. But first, he had one last stop to make. The Sunshine Orphanage was on the outskirts of town, an old but well-maintained building painted faded yellow. Sarah parked straight ahead and took a deep breath before getting out of the car. Melissa Johnson, the orphanage's director, greeted Sarah with surprise. It was a middle-aged woman with gentle eyes and gray hair tied in a bun. "Sarah Miller, what a pleasant surprise. Your father mentioned that you would be coming this week, but he didn't expect it so soon." Sarah forced a smile. "Can I talk to you privately, Mrs.?" Johnson? In the principal's small office, Sarah placed the briefcase on the table. I need you to see that. As Melissa examined the documents, her expression changed from confusion to shock, and finally to deep sadness. I suspected something was wrong, she admitted. The promised amounts never arrived in full. There were always excuses, delays. I'm sorry, Sarah said, the guilt weighing on her shoulders even though she wasn't responsible. I'm going to do everything I can to fix that. What do you intend to do? Melissa asked. First, denounce. The police, the congregation, everyone needs to know. Then, Sarah hesitated. I'm leaving Oak Ridge. I need to find my own way. Melissa nodded, understanding. Sometimes we need to get lost to find ourselves. Upon leaving the orphanage, Sarah noticed a group of children playing in the courtyard. A girl of approximately 6 years old, with braids and a flowered dress, waved to her. Sarah waved back, feeling a pang in her heart. These were the children who had been harmed by the greed of their own family. Back in the car, she finally turned on her cell phone. Among the dozens of messages from his father, there was one from an unknown number. I hope you're well. If I need to talk, I'll be at the Main Street Cafe at 10 a.m. Sarah looked at her watch. 9:45. Something impelled her to go to the meeting. Maybe it was the unexpected connection she had felt with Lucas, or maybe it was just the need to talk to someone who understood her pain. The Oak Ridge Cafe was a cozy establishment in the center of town. When Sarah entered, she immediately felt the looks. News was running fast in small towns, and she suspected that her dramatic departure from the church was already public knowledge. Lucas was sitting at a table in the back, a cup of coffee in his hands. When he saw her, he stood up. "You've come," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I don't have many options for friends at the moment," she replied with a sad smile. They talked for hours. Lucas told of his difficult childhood, growing up with a single mother stigmatized by the community. How they moved constantly, whenever Rachel's past caught up with them. How he grew up resenting the church and all that it stood for. "What has changed?" Sarah asked. "You said your mother wanted you to make peace with the past." Lucas took a sip of his coffee, now cold. In the last months of her life, a hospital chaplain visited her regularly. A man unlike any religious leader we know. He didn't judge, he just listened. It showed her a side of faith that we had never experienced. And did you believe it? Not immediately, he admitted. But I saw how it brought peace to my mother in her last days. She told me something I've never forgotten. Luke, don't confuse God with the imperfect people who claim to represent him. Those words struck Sarah deeply. Wasn't that exactly what she was doing? Rejecting their faith because those who were supposed to exemplify it had failed. "What are you going to do now?" Lucas asked. "I'm going to the police station to deliver these documents," she replied, pointing to the briefcase. "Then, I don't know. Maybe travel, find a place where no one knows my name or my history." "Running away doesn't cut it," Lucas said softly. "Believe me, I've tried this for years." "I'm not running away," she protested. "I'm looking for a new beginning." "There's a difference between starting over and running away," he argued. "One is motivated by hope, the other by fear." Before Sarah could answer, the cafe door opened and her father entered. His eyes, red and swollen, roamed the room until he found her. "Sarah," he called, walking toward her. She stood up, tense. I don't want to talk to you right now, Dad. Please, he pleaded. Just 5 minutes. Lucas stood up too. I'll wait outside, he told Sarah, casting a harsh glance at Pastor James before leaving. Reluctantly, Sarah indicated the empty chair. Her father sat up, looking smaller and older than she had ever seen him. I spent the whole night praying, he began, asking for forgiveness, seeking clarity. And God told you to justify stealing? Sarah asked, the bitterness evident in her voice. No, he replied, surprising her. God showed me my mistakes, my pride, my hypocrisy. I went to the police station this morning, Sarah. I confessed everything. She stared at him, incredulous. What? Robert, too, he continued. We are facing the consequences of our actions. It's the least we can do. Sarah didn't know what to say. He had prepared for a battle, not a surrender. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know you were right, he replied, tears in his eyes. And because, despite everything, you are my daughter and I love you. I don't expect your forgiveness now. Maybe I never deserve it. But I want him to know that I'm trying to do what's right, even if it's late. He got up to leave, but stopped. And Sarah, do not give up your faith because of my mistakes. God is greater than any human flaw, including mine. With those words, he left, leaving Sarah in a whirlwind of emotions. This story is just beginning. Leave your like to show that you want to see the sequel, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any episode of this journey of faith and redemption. In the weeks that followed, Oak Ridge was rocked by scandal. The respected Pastor James Miller and his brother Robert faced criminal charges of embezzlement and fraud. The congregation was divided. Some advocated forgiveness and rehabilitation, others demanded harsh justice. Sarah watched everything from a distance. She had rented a small apartment on the outskirts of town, determined to stay away from the drama while she decided her next move. Surprisingly, Luke had become her most constant support. "How did you do it?" she asked him one afternoon as they walked through the city park. Autumn painted the trees red. And gold, a beauty that contrasted with the turmoil in her soul. What did I achieve? Forgive. Come back. To face all this. Lucas stopped, watching a group of children playing in the distance. It wasn't easy, he admitted. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a process. What process? First, I had to separate God from the people who claimed to represent him, he explained. Then I had to face my own anger and resentment. I realized I was poisoning myself, not them. Sarah reflected on those words. His anger was justified, but it was beginning to consume her. What now? She asked. What do you feel when you look at the church, at my father? Compassion, he replied after a moment. I see imperfect people struggling with their own flaws just like me. Sarah wasn't sure if she would ever reach that level of understanding. His father's betrayal was still an open wound. That night, alone in her apartment, Sarah opened her Bible for the first time since the incident. The familiar pages now looked strange, as if they belonged to someone else, to another life. She flipped aimlessly until she stopped at Psalms. His eyes fell on Psalm 34:18. The Lord is near to those who are broken in heart, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. Tears began to fall. His heart was truly broken, his spirit utterly cast down. Where was God in the midst of all this? A sudden knock on the door startled her. It was almost midnight. Who could it be? Cautiously, she peered through the peephole. It was Melissa Johnson, the orphanage's director, looking agitated. "Melissa, what happened?" Sarah asked as she opened the door. "It's the orphanage," Melissa replied, her voice trembling. "We received an eviction order. We have 30 days to leave." "What? How is this possible?" "The building belongs to a trust controlled by the church," Melissa explained. "With the scandal, the new administrators are liquidating assets to cover debts and possible indemnities." Sarah felt a rush of nausea. "What about the children?" "They will be redistributed to other institutions in the state. Some families who are in the process of adoption are trying to speed up the procedures, but most—" Melissa couldn't finish the sentence. Sarah invited her in and prepared some tea while Melissa explained the situation in detail. The orphanage would need at least $250,000 to purchase the building and keep it running independently of the church. "It's impossible to raise so much money in such a short time," Melissa concluded, heartbroken. Sarah thought of the group of children she had seen playing in the courtyard, of the girl with pigtails who had waved to her. They had already lost so much in life. Now they would also lose their home, their community, each other. "We'll find a solution," Sarah promised, though she had no idea how to make good on that promise. After Melissa left, Sarah couldn't sleep. His cell phone showed 3:33 in the morning, the same time he would wake up days later with the scream and the fire. She took the card Lucas had given her and dialed his number. "Sarah?" His sleepy voice answered after several rings. "Is everything okay?" "I need your help," she replied. "It's about the orphanage." The next morning, Sarah and Lucas met with Melissa at Sunshine. The children were in school, and the building had a melancholy stillness. "I have an idea," Sarah announced. "We are going to organize a fundraising event, something big that involves the whole community." "In 30 days?" Melissa questioned, skeptical. "And after everything that's happened to the church, do you think people are going to contribute?" "Yes," Sarah replied with a conviction she didn't know she possessed. "Because it won't be about the church or my father. It will be about these children and their future." Luke, who had been silent until then, added, "And because we are going to show this city the true meaning of faith and community." In the days that followed, Sarah and Lucas worked tirelessly. They created a campaign called Saving Sunshine, with a presence on social networks, posters around the city, and visits to local businesses in search of support. The initial response was lukewarm. Many associated the orphanage with the church and, by extension, the scandal. Others simply did not believe that it was possible to raise so much money in such a short time. "We're wasting time," Sarah vented after a week of efforts with minimal results. They had raised only $15,000 in donation pledges, a far cry from the goal. "We need something bigger," Lucas reflected. "Something that captures everyone's attention, not just in Oak Ridge, but in the surrounding towns as well." That's when Sarah had an idea. "A concert," she suggested. "A great benefit concert in the Central Park." "Who would perform?" Melissa asked. Sarah hesitated. "I know someone, an old college classmate who became a gospel singer. She has a good fan base in the region." "Do you think she would accept it?" Lucas asked. "There's only one way to find out." Are you enjoying this story of faith and overcoming? Leave your like and turn on notifications so you don't miss any episodes. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Rebecca Torres had been Sarah's classmate in the music course at the state college. While Sarah had abandoned her music career to work with her father in the church, Rebecca had moved on, building a respectable career in the regional gospel scene. They hadn't spoken. In years, and Sarah feared that her friend would refuse her request, especially considering the circumstances. Still, she mustered up the courage and called. "Sarah Miller?" Rebecca's melodious voice expressed genuine surprise. "How long? How are you?" "Honestly, going through hard times," Sarah replied, deciding to be completely honest. "I imagine you've heard about what happened to my father and the church." A brief silence. "Yes, I did." "I'm sorry, Sarah. I don't care about that." Sarah hastened to explain. "I'm working on a project to save the Sunshine Orphanage. They're going to lose the building in less than a month, and we're organizing a benefit concert. I was hoping you could perform." Another silence, longer this time. "I understand if you don't want to get involved," Sarah continued. "Considering everything that happened." "Sarah," Rebecca interrupted, "do you remember what you said to me when I left college to pursue a career?" Sarah tried to remember. It had been so long ago. "You said music wasn't just about notes and melodies, but about touching hearts and changing lives," Rebecca continued. "I said that one day I would find the perfect purpose for my gift." Sarah felt tears forming. She had said this in another life, when her faith was unshakable and her path seemed clear. "I think I've found that purpose," Rebecca concluded. "Count on me for the concert." The relief Sarah felt was immense. "Thank you, Rebecca. That means a lot. But I have one condition," Rebecca added. "I want you to sing with me." Sarah almost dropped the phone. "What? No, I don't sing anymore. It's been years since—" "That's exactly why," Rebecca insisted. "Sarah, you had the most beautiful voice I've ever heard, and now, more than ever, you need to rediscover your own voice." The idea of singing in public again terrified Sarah. She had abandoned music when she took on more responsibilities in the church, convinced by her father that she should focus on more. Practical work for the ministry. "I don't know if I can," she admitted. "You can do it," Rebecca said. "And it does. Not for me, not for the audience, but for yourself." When Sarah told Lucas about the conversation, she expected him to agree with her reservations. Instead, he supported Rebecca. "She's right," he said, as they worked on the posters for the event. "You need to rediscover who you are, separated from the shadow of your father in the church." "What if I don't know who I am?" Sarah asked, vulnerability evident in her voice. Lucas stopped what he was doing and looked her straight in the eye. "So this is your chance to find out." In the weeks that followed, as preparations for the concert progressed, Sarah began rehearsing with Rebecca. At first, his voice was hesitant, unsure. Years of silence had rusted his instrument. But gradually, with Rebecca's patience and encouragement, she began to find her voice again. They carefully chose the repertoire, songs of hope, redemption, and new beginnings. The theme song was to be "Because He Lives," an anthem that talked about finding hope even in the darkest of times. "This song has always meant a lot to me," Rebecca explained during a rehearsal. "Especially the chorus, 'Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone.'" Sarah felt the words resonate deeply. Despite all her anger and disappointment, there was a part of her that still clung to the hope that there was something greater, something beyond the human failings she had witnessed. Meanwhile, Lucas coordinated the logistics of the event. He arranged for the city to give up the Central Park for free, convinced local businesses to donate food and drinks for sale during the concert, with all proceeds going to the orphanage, and even organized a silent auction with items donated by local merchants. The social media campaign began to gain traction. The story of the orphanage threatened with eviction, combined with the promise of a concert with Rebecca Torres was attracting attention beyond Oak Ridge. A week before the event, Sarah received an unexpected visitor at her apartment. His father was standing at his door, looking aged and tired. "Can I come in?" he asked humbly. Sarah hesitated, but eventually opened the door. They hadn't spoken since meeting at the cafe weeks ago. "I heard about the concert," he said, sitting in the only seat in the small room. "What are you doing for the orphanage?" "It's admirable." "I'm not." "Doing this to be admired," Sarah replied, still maintaining emotional distance. "I'm doing it because it's the right thing." "I know," he nodded. "And that's why I came. I want to help." Sarah stared at him, suspicious. "How?" "I have some personal savings," he explained. "It's not much, but it's $50,000 that is not involved with the church or its finances. I want to donate them to the orphanage." Sarah was speechless. It was a significant amount, although still far from what was necessary. "Why?" she finally asked. His father looked at his own hands, now trembling with age and the weight of the consequences. "Because I'm trying to fix what I can. I know that some mistakes cannot be fixed, that some bridges have been burned forever. But if I can do something to help those children, I want to do it." Sarah felt an internal conflict. Part of her wanted to reject the offer, to keep the distance she had established. Another part recognized the sincerity in his words and the importance. Of that donation to the orphanage. "I'm going to talk to Melissa," she finally replied. "The final decision will be hers." His father nodded, accepting the terms. Before leaving, he stopped at the door. "Sarah, I heard you're going to sing at the concert." She confirmed with a nod. "Your mother would be proud," he said, his voice breaking. "She always said her voice was a gift from God." With those words, he departed, leaving Sarah with unshed tears and long-buried memories of her mother who had always encouraged her to sing. Don't forget to leave your comment about what you think will happen at the concert. Your opinion is very important to us. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode of this exciting journey of faith. The day of the concert dawned with a perfectly blue sky, a rare autumn gift in Oak Ridge. Sarah woke up before sunrise, her stomach a knot of nervousness and anticipation. Today would be the test of everything they had. Worked on in the last few weeks. Today they would find out if they could save the Sunshine Orphanage. More than that, today she would sing publicly for the first time in years, exposing not only her voice, but her wounded and healing heart. His phone rang. It was Lucas. "Are you awake yet?" he asked, sounding energized despite the time. "I couldn't get much sleep," she admitted. "Me neither. Listen, I need you to come to the park now. There's something you need to see." "Now? The concert only?" "Starts at 2 in the afternoon." "Trust me," he insisted. "It's important." Intrigued, Sarah quickly dressed and drove to the Central Park. The sun was beginning to rise on the horizon, bathing the city in a golden light that seemed to be of good auspiciousness. When she arrived at the park, Sarah was flabbergasted. Dozens of volunteers were already there, setting up the stage, arranging chairs, hanging banners and lights. People she knew from church, neighbors, local merchants, even teenagers, who would normally be sleeping at that time on a Saturday. Lucas was waiting for her near the entrance, a wide smile on his face. "What's all this?" she asked, amazed. "The community," he replied simply. "When they heard we needed help putting everything together today, they just showed up." Sarah watched the scene, moved. After weeks of feeling isolated and betrayed by her community, seeing so many people united by a cause she had embraced was deeply moving. "There's more," Lucas continued. Guiding her to a table where Melissa was sitting with a stack of papers. "Show her," he asked the headmistress. Melissa handed Sarah a briefcase. "These are the advance donations for the silent auction and online ticket sales. We've already raised $120,000. Sarah almost dropped the briefcase. "What? How?" "The story spread," Melissa explained, her eyes shining with excitement. "Not just in Oak Ridge, but in the surrounding towns as well. We received donations from people who had never heard of Sunshine before, but who were moved by our situation. With your father's donation," Lucas added, "we already have $170,000. We are closer than we imagined." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude and hope, feelings that had been absent from her life in recent weeks. Maybe, just maybe, they could do it. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The park has been transformed, a professional stage in the center, tents with food and drink around it, tables for the silent auction, and even an activity area for children. The children from the orphanage arrived, excited by the attention and the event organized for them. As the time of the concert approached, the park began to fill up. Hundreds of people arrived, far more than Sarah had expected. Rebecca arrived with her band, and the final rehearsals took place in a makeshift dressing room. "Nervous?" Rebecca asked as they got ready. "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "Remember why we're doing this," Rebecca advised. "It's not about you or me. It's about those kids and their future." Sarah nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. Through the curtain of the dressing room, she could see the crowd growing. He recognized familiar faces, church members, old friends, even people he had grown up with and lost touch with over the years. And then, in the front row, she saw her father. He hadn't mentioned that he would come. Next to him was Lucas, chatting animatedly with a group of children from the orphanage. At 2 o'clock sharp, the idea. Concert began. Rebecca opened the show with some of her best-known songs, and the crowd responded enthusiastically. Between songs, she talked about the orphanage, the importance of community, and how true faith manifests itself in actions, not just words. Then came the moment Sarah had feared and longed for. Rebecca called her to the stage. "Today I have the privilege of reintroducing you to a voice that has remained silenced for far too long," Rebecca announced. "My friend Sarah Miller is going to join me for a very special song." A murmur ran through the crowd. Everyone knew Sarah, the daughter of the disgraced pastor. Everyone knew of his break with the church and with his father. What they didn't know was that she possessed a voice that could touch souls. With trembling legs, Sarah took the stage. The afternoon sunlight blinded her momentarily, and she blinked, trying to focus. As her eyes adjusted, she saw hundreds of faces staring back at her. Some curious, some encouraging, some even skeptical. Rebecca shook his hand in solidarity and made a sign to the band. The first chords of "Because He Lives" filled the air. Sarah closed her eyes, letting the familiar music envelop her. When her cue came, she opened her mouth, unsure if any sound would come out. But it did. His voice, at first soft and hesitant, gained strength with each note. Years of self-imposed silence faded as she sang about hope in the midst of despair, about light in the darkness, about a love that transcends human flaws. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. And because I know that He controls the future, life is worth living just because He lives. When Sarah opened her eyes, she saw something she would never forget. People crying, hugging each other, some with their hands raised in worship. His voice had touched something deep in them, not just the beauty of the melody, but the authenticity of someone who had passed through the valley of disillusionment and yet found reasons to sing. In the front row, her father wept openly, his face raised to her with an expression of pride and regret that broke and healed her heart simultaneously. By her side, Lucas watched her with something that went beyond admiration, a look that spoke of connection, understanding, and future possibilities. When the song ended, there was a moment of absolute silence, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Then, like a wave, the applause erupted. People stood up, applauding, whistling, some even shouting, "One more!" Rebecca hugged Sarah, both with tears in their eyes. "You should never have stopped singing," she whispered. The rest of the concert passed like a dream. Sarah sang 2 more songs with Rebecca, each more powerful than the last. Between performances, Melissa took the stage to update everyone on the donations, which kept coming in every minute. As the sun began to set, casting orange rays over the park, Rebecca called Sarah for the final song. But before they could begin, Lucas took the stage, holding an envelope. "Sorry for the interruption," he said into the microphone, "but we just received a donation that couldn't wait." He handed the envelope to Melissa, who opened it with trembling hands. Her eyes widened as she read the content. "It's a check for $80,000, she announced, her voice breaking. "From the Rachel Reed Memorial Fund." Sarah looked at Lucas, confused. He smiled, tears in his eyes. "My mom left her a life." "Insurance policy," he explained. "I was saving it to buy a house, but she would have wanted that. A chance for other children to have what we couldn't have. Stability, community, a place to call home." The crowd erupted in applause again. With this donation, they had exceeded the goal. The Sunshine Orphanage was saved. In that moment, as the sun set over Oak Ridge and the first stars appeared in the sky, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: peace. Not the superficial peace of those who have never faced storms, but the deep peace of those who have crossed the valley of shadow and found light on the other side. His faith had been shaken, broken, almost destroyed. But from the ruins, something new was emerging, a more authentic, more compassionate, more resilient faith. A faith not based on authority figures or institutions, but on a personal relationship with something greater than itself. As she sang the last song of the night, Sarah looked up at the starry sky and, for the first time in weeks, felt truly at home. This story continues. Don't miss the second part, where we will see how Sarah and Lucas will face new challenges and discover the true meaning of redemption. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications to be the first to watch. 3 days after the successful concert, Sarah was in the office of the Sunshine Orphanage, helping Melissa organize the paperwork for the purchase of the building. The mood was one of celebration. They had raised more than $300,000, surpassing the initial goal. "I never thought we'd make it," Melissa confessed, stamping documents. "You performed a miracle, Sarah." "It wasn't me," Sarah replied honestly. "It was the whole community. It was Lucas, Rebecca, all those people who donated." "And you," Melissa insisted. His voice, his courage to stand up after everything that happened. That inspired people. Sarah smiled, still uncomfortable with the compliments. In recent weeks, she had rediscovered parts of herself that she believed were lost forever. Her voice, her ability to trust, her faith. Not the same blind faith as before, but something more mature, more resilient. His phone rang. It was Lucas. "Can you talk now?" he asked, his voice strangely tense. "Of course. What happened?" "You'd better come to the church, now." "The church? Why?" "Just come, Sarah. It is urgent." Lucas's tone alarmed her. She quickly said goodbye to Melissa and drove to the church, her heart racing with grim possibilities. Had his father relapsed? Is the congregation facing more problems? When he arrived, he saw several cars parked in front, including Lucas's and, surprisingly, a police car. The old wooden church, which had been a part of his life since childhood, looked strangely menacing under the cloudy sky that afternoon. Lucas was waiting for her at the entrance, his face grave. "What's going on?" she asked, hurrying out of the car. "Someone broke into the church last night," he explained. "They vandalized the interior and—" He hesitated. "And what, Lucas?" "They left a message. For you." Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. She followed Lucas into the church, where she found his father talking to a police officer. The internal walls, once immaculate, were covered in graffiti. Seats had been overturned, glass broken. But what caught his attention the most was the message painted in red on the pulpit. "Sarah Miller, you're going to pay for what you did." "Oh my God," she whispered, feeling her legs weaken. Lucas supported her. "Who would do that?" she asked, looking at her father and the policeman. "We don't know yet," the officer replied, "but it feels personal." "Does it have anything to do with the concert? With the orphanage?" "Possibly," his father interjected. "Not everyone was happy with the success of the event, Sarah, especially considering the circumstances." She understood what he didn't say. His public break with the church, followed by the success of the independent concert, had created resentment. Some people saw his action as a betrayal, not as redemption. "We found that too," the officer said, handing him an envelope in a plastic bag. "It was nailed in the pulpit, with his name." Sarah looked at the sealed envelope with apprehension. "Can I—" "We've checked it. It doesn't contain anything dangerous." The officer nodded. "But don't touch it directly. There may be fingerprints." With trembling hands, Sarah opened the bag and pulled out the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "Fire purifies what truth cannot. You have 24 hours to confess your sins, or everything you love will burn." Sarah dropped the paper, horrified. "Is this a fire threat?" "It seems so," the officer confirmed gravely. "We will increase patrols around the church, the orphanage, and your residence, Miss Helena Sanchez. Miller. In the meantime, I recommend caution." When the officer stepped aside to examine more, Evidence, Sarah turned to her father and Lucas. "Who would do that?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "And what sins should I confess?" His father looked 10 years old in the last few hours. "Not everyone took my confession well, Sarah. Some more conservative members of the congregation believe that I should have kept everything secret, resolved internally. And they blame me for exposing the truth," she concluded. "You have become a symbol," Lucas explained gently. "For some, of courage and integrity. For others, of betrayal," she added. At that moment, Sarah's cell phone rang again. Unknown number. With hesitation, she answered and put it on speakerphone. "Sarah Miller?" An electronically distorted voice asked. "Yes, who is it?" "Someone who knows his true sins. You have until midnight to make a public confession. Admit that it was all a setup to destroy your father in the church, or the fire will do the work that its lies tried to cover up." The call was abruptly terminated. Sarah looked at Lucas and his father, terror evident in their eyes. "This is crazy! I didn't set anything up, I just exposed the truth." "We know that," Lucas reassured her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "But someone is determined to create a different narrative." The policeman returned, having heard part of the conversation. "We will trace this connection. Meanwhile, Miss Helena Sanchez. Miller, it would be prudent for you to stay in a safe place, maybe out of town, until we sort this out." "No," Sarah replied, a sudden determination replacing fear. "I'm not going to run away. I've run too far away, from the truth, from myself, from my faith. I will not let fear control me again." "Sarah, this is serious," her father argued. "This person, whoever it is threatening to burn down property. And it will start with the church," she concluded, looking around at the vandalized shrine. The place where it all began. A terrible thought occurred to Sarah. "The orphanage," she whispered. "The children." "We've already alerted Ms. Johnson," the officer assured. "We're providing additional security there as well." Sarah closed her eyes, trying to organize her thoughts in the midst of panic. When he opened them again, there was a firm resolve in his gaze. "I need to find out who's doing this," she declared. "And I have less than 24 hours. Lucas nodded, supporting his decision. "You're not alone in this, Sarah. Let's find out together." As they left the church, the sky darkened with approaching storm clouds, a harbinger of things to come. Sarah looked at her watch, 3:33 p.m. In exactly 8 hours and 27 minutes, the threatener's deadline would expire. And then, the fire would come. What will happen to Sarah? Who is behind the threats? And how will your newfound faith face this new test? Don't miss the second part of this exciting story of faith and redemption. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to be the first to find out. The storm looming on the horizon finally arrived, unloading a torrential downpour on Oak Ridge. Sarah and Lucas were sitting in the small living room of her apartment, a makeshift blackboard between them covered in names and possible suspects. "Let's recap," Lucas said, running his hand through his damp hair. "Who would have reason to threaten you in the church?" Sarah looked at the list they had compiled. Disgruntled members of the congregation, people who had lost money from misappropriated donations, her father's old rivals in the local ministry. It could be any of them, she sighed, frustrated, or none. The clock on the wall read 8:15 p.m. Time was running out. What if we're approaching it the wrong way? Lucas suggested, standing up to stretch his legs. What if it's not about you or your father directly, but about the orphanage? Sarah frowned. What do you mean? Think about it. The timing is suspicious. You just raised enough money to buy the building. Someone could have other plans for that property. Sarah's mind began to work quickly. The new church administrators, they were liquidating assets to cover debts. Exactly, Lucas nodded. What if someone already had an agreement to buy that land? Someone who is now furious that the orphanage got the money first? Sarah pulled out her phone. I'm going to call Melissa. She can know who else was interested in the property. The call was direct to voicemail. Sarah left an urgent message and hung up, worried. She doesn't answer. This is not normal. Let's go there, Lucas decided, already grabbing the car keys. The rain was falling mercilessly when they arrived at the Sunshine Orphanage. The building was partially dark, with only a few lights on the upper floor where the children's bedrooms were. Something's wrong, Sarah muttered, as they ran from the garage to the driveway, shielding themselves as best they could from the storm. They rang the doorbell several times with no response. Sarah tried the doorknob, locked. Through the windows, they could see that the entrance hall was dark and empty. The kids should be here, Sarah said, panic growing in her voice. It's dinner time. They should be in the cafeteria. Lucas circled the building, looking for another entrance, while Sarah kept trying to call Melissa. Finally, he returned, soaking wet and panting. There's an open window in the back, he informed. We can go in there. They snuck through the laundry. Window, entering the silent building. The familiar smell of laundry detergent and homemade food filled the air, but there was something else, a chemical odor that Sarah couldn't identify. Melissa? She called, her voice echoing through the empty hallways. Children? No response. They cautiously advanced to the cafeteria. The tables were set for dinner, but the food remained untouched, as if everyone had left in a hurry. That doesn't make sense, Sarah whispered. Where is everyone? A noise. Coming from Melissa's office alerted them. They approached silently, hearing muffled voices on the other side of the door. We have no choice, a male voice said. The plan continues as agreed. What about the children? It was Melissa's voice, tense and frightened. They are safe in the church shelter. When it's all over, they can come back. Sarah and Lucas exchanged alarmed looks. Lucas motioned for her to move away, but it was too late. The wooden floor creaked under his feet. The voices inside the office abruptly fell silent. The door opened, revealing Melissa with an expression of terror, and next to her, Robert Miller, Sarah's uncle. Sarah? Melissa exclaimed, surprised. What are you doing here? I could ask the same, Sarah replied, staring at her uncle. What's going on, Uncle Robert? I thought you were under house arrest. Robert looked nervous, but kept a look of calm. I am allowed to go out to meetings related to church affairs. Melissa and I were discussing the formal transfer of ownership. Something in the explanation didn't ring true. Sarah noticed dark spots on the sleeves of Robert's shirt, spots that looked like oil or some other liquid. Where are the children? Lucas asked directly. At church, Melissa replied quickly. There was a problem with the electrical system here. We think it's safer to take them there temporarily. Without telling me? Sarah questioned. And why didn't you answer my calls? My phone. Melissa started, but Robert interrupted her. "No more interrogation," he said sharply. "You shouldn't be here. Get out now before I call the police for trespassing." Lucas took a step forward. "The police are already involved, Mr. Miller. Threats have been made against Sarah and this property." Robert's face paled visibly. "What threats?" Sarah studied her uncle's reaction. There was something in his eyes, not surprise but fear, as if he knew exactly what Luke was talking about. "Uncle Robert," she said slowly, "what's really going on here?" At that moment, Sarah noticed something on the floor behind them, a trail of dark liquid coming from the hallway that led to the basement. The same chemical smell he had smelled before was stronger now. "It's gasoline," Lucas whispered, coming to the same conclusion as her. It all happened very fast after that. Robert pushed Melissa aside and tried to run, but Lucas was faster, blocking his path. The two men fell to the ground in a hand-to-hand fight. "Sarah, run!" Lucas screamed as he tried to immobilize Robert. "He's going to burn down the place!" Sarah hesitated, torn between helping Lucas and seeking help. That's when he saw the lighter in his uncle's hand, the little flame dancing dangerously close to the ground, wet with fuel. "No!" she cried, launching herself forward. Too late. The lighter fell, and a line of fire ran down the hallway like a raging serpent, devouring the path of gasoline Robert had scattered. "To the basement!" Melissa screamed, pulling Sarah by the arm. "There's an emergency exit there!" The three of them ran, leaving Robert behind. The fire spread quickly, fueled by the fuel and dry materials of the old building. Smoke began to fill the corridors, making it difficult to breathe and see. In the basement, they found more evidence of Robert's plan, empty jerry cans of gasoline piled in a corner. The emergency exit was on the other side, a metal door that led directly outside. Lucas tried to open it, but it was locked. "Damn, we need a key!" "It's in my office," Melissa said, coughing at the smoke that was beginning to come down the stairs, "in the first drawer of the desk." "I will," Sarah volunteered. "No!" Lucas and Melissa screamed in unison. "It's too dangerous," Lucas argued. "The fire is spreading up there." "We have no choice," Sarah insisted. "You two stay here. I'll be quick." Before they could protest again, she went upstairs, covering her nose and mouth with the sleeve of her blouse. The heat hit her like a wall when she reached the main hallway. The flames had already consumed half of the building, advancing rapidly towards him. Sarah ran crouching, trying to stay below the thicker smoke. When he arrived at Melissa's office, the door was closed. She turned the knob. Locked. "No, no, no," she muttered, desperate. Looking around, Sarah saw a heavy chair. Without hesitation, she lifted it up and threw it against the office window. The glass shattered, and she used the chair. Itself to remove the remaining shards before hoisting herself inside. The office was still relatively intact, although smoke was already coming in. Sarah ran to the desk and opened the first drawer. Among folders and documents, he found a set of keys. As he turned to leave, he saw a figure in the doorway, his Uncle Robert, his face contorted in a mixture of anger and despair. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, pulling back. "You ruined everything," he replied, moving forward. "Years of work." "Our reputation, everything destroyed because you couldn't keep your mouth shut." "You were stealing from orphaned children," Sarah exclaimed, incredulous. "I was saving the church," he retorted. "Your father was too weak to do what was necessary. I did the dirty work to keep everything running. And now you're going to kill innocent people? Is this your idea of salvation? Robert laughed bitterly. No one will get hurt. The children are safe in the church, as Melissa said. Only the building. Will burn. A tragic electrical accident. And the insurance will pay much more than you collected at that pathetic concert. What about us? Sarah asked, still stepping back as he advanced. Lucas, Melissa, and me? A dangerous glint flashed across Robert's eyes. Accidents happen. At that moment, a burning beam collapsed in the hallway, blocking the door. Robert turned, momentarily distracted by the noise, and Sarah seized the opportunity. She ran to the broken window, but her uncle was faster, grabbing her arm. "You're not going anywhere," he growled. Sarah struggled, trying to free herself. The heat increased by the second, and the smoke made it difficult to breathe. In her desperation, she remembered the self-defense classes she had taken in college. With one swift movement, she stomped Robert's foot, and when he loosened his grip, she spun around and pushed him with all his might. Robert staggered back, tripping over a stack of books. As he fell, his head hit the corner of the desk with a horrible sound. He slid to the ground, motionless. "Uncle Robert?" Sarah called out, horrified. There was no response. A pool of blood began to form under his head. Sarah wanted to help him, to check if he was alive, but the fire was advancing quickly. The oxygen in the office was running out, and she was starting to feel dizzy. With the last shred of strength, she grabbed her keys and jumped out of the window, falling painfully onto the lawn outside. Coughing and panting, she crawled away from the burning building, keys firmly clutched in her hand. In the distance, he could hear sirens. Someone had seen the smoke and called the fire department. Sarah went around the building, arriving at the emergency exit of the basement. With trembling hands, she tried several keys until she found the right one. The door opened and Lucas and Melissa left, coughing and staggering. "Sarah!" Lucas exclaimed, hugging her. "Thank God you're fine." "Robert," she managed to say between coughs. He was injured. It's in the office." Lucas looked at the building, now almost completely engulfed in flames. "It's too late," he said softly. "No one could survive inside right now." Sarah felt the weight of this reality hit her. Her uncle, despite everything he had done, was family. And now he was probably dead because of her. The three walked away from the burning building as fire trucks arrived, followed by police cruisers and ambulances. As paramedics attended to them, Sarah told the police everything that had happened. The threats, Robert's discovery at the orphanage, his confession, the fight. "The children?" she asked suddenly. "He said they were in the church. We need to check." A police officer made a quick call and confirmed. The children were safe in the church, under the care of volunteers. Robert had convinced Melissa to take them there early, claiming an emergency electrical inspection of the orphanage. As she watched the Sunshine Orphanage be consumed by flames, Sarah felt a deep sadness. Not just for the building, but for everything it stood for. Dreams, hopes, a future for destitute children. All the money they had raised, all the effort of the community, reduced to ashes by the bitterness and greed of one man. Lucas approached, placing a blanket over his shoulders. "You're thinking it was all in vain," he said, not as a question, but as an observation. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her soot-covered face. "It wasn't." he stated with conviction. The building was just a structure. What you have built, the unity of the community, the hope, the renewed faith that no one can burn. She looked at him, wanting to believe it. Besides, he continued, the money is still there. We can rebuild. Better, safer, better suited to children's needs. A paramedic approached, interrupting the conversation. We need to take her to the hospital to check for smoke inhalation, he said. Sarah nodded, too exhausted to argue. As she was guided to the ambulance, she looked one last time at the burning building. For a moment, he thought he saw a figure in the second-story window, a silhouette watching everything. But when it flashed, there was only fire and smoke. At the hospital, after being examined and medicated, Sarah received a visit from her father. He entered the room hesitantly, his face marked by worry and guilt. I heard what happened, he said, sitting down by his bedside. Robert, they found his body. Sarah closed her eyes, the confirmation bringing a wave of mixed emotions. He confessed everything, Dad. He was the one who made the threats, who vandalized the church. He wanted to burn down the orphanage for the insurance money. My own brother, his father murmured, incredulous. How could I not realize what he had become? Maybe because we were all too busy keeping up appearances, Sarah replied without rancor, just stating a fact. Worried about what others would think, about our perfect image. His father nodded slowly. You're right. We have built a facade so convincing that even we believe in it ourselves. They were silent for a moment, the constant beeping of the monitors filling the void. What happens now? His father finally asked. Sarah looked out the hospital window. Night had completely fallen, but in the distance, she could still see the orange glow of the fire against the sky. We rebuild, she replied simply. Not just the orphanage, but everything. Our family, our faith, our community. Brick by brick, truth for truth. Her father took her hand, squeezing it gently. Together? Sarah hesitated only for a moment before nodding. Together. When his father left, Lucas entered, bringing a small bouquet of wildflowers. Picked from the park, he explained with a shy smile. I didn't have time to go to the flower shop. Sarah smiled, touched by the simple gesture. They are perfect. Lucas sat down in the chair that his father had occupied. I have news. The police found Robert's cell phone. He was working with someone. Sarah straightened up in bed, alarmed. Who? They don't know yet, but they found messages matching details of the plan. Whoever it is, it's still around. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. The threat was not over. There's more, Lucas continued, his expression becoming even more serious. They found something in Robert's office, partially burned, but still legible. What? An old church document, a kind of pact signed by several founding members, including my grandfather and his grandfather. Sarah Franziou at the head, confused. What kind of pact? I don't know exactly. Most of it was burned, but there were mentions of a secret that must remain buried and the price of silence. What does that mean? Lucas shook his head. I don't know, but I think Robert wasn't just acting for money. There was something else, something he feared would be discovered if the orphanage remained open. Sarah tried to process this new information. What secret could be so terrible as to warrant arson and attempted murder? We need to find out, she said finally. Yes, Lucas agreed, but not today. Now you need to rest. He got up to leave, but Sarah held his hand. Stay, she asked softly. Please. Lucas nodded and sat down again, still holding his hand. Together, they watched the night through the hospital window, each lost in their own thoughts of what the future held. Outside, the rain finally stopped, and the clouds began to dissipate, revealing a starry sky. Somewhere in the distance, the smoldering ruins of the Sunshine Orphanage slowly cooled, holding secrets that would soon come to light. And in a house on the outskirts of Oak Ridge, someone watched the news about the fire on television, a phone in hand and an unsent message on the screen. It's done, but the girl survived. What do we do now? The mystery deepens. Who is Robert's accomplice? What ancient secret does the church hide? And how will Sarah find the strength to face these new challenges? Don't miss the second part of this exciting journey of faith and redemption. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to be the first to find out.